Welcome everybody back to the Sean Trey Show. I have a really interesting guest with me tonight. Now, would you like to tell everyone who you are and what you do?
Hi Sean,
Hello.
my name is Marten. I'm here from Sweden, Stockholm,
Nice.
and I'm a recording engineer and producer and also drummer. And yeah, I do a little bit this and that. I own a studio, I own a music school, and yeah, it's a little bit this and that.
That's awesome. Well, that's like I think the
Yeah.
best thing is to be a little bit of this and that. Now, I want to dive in, and so how I found you was I was looking on on Instagram, and I saw some different music sites, and your studio popped up, and you have some of the most beautiful analog gear, and there's a lot of it was a beautiful studio. Tell me a little bit about your recording studio and how you got it going and how you set it up.
Thank you so
Always fun.
much. Well, it's been a long journey to say the least. It's built from scratch, from a basement. And I always had a huge interest in music studios. I went visit all these amazing places in the United States, the Blackbird studio, all these Nashville studios, to get the inspiration and try to get ideas how I should start, and all of that came. I tried to get as much as possible. Of course, I couldn't build a Blackbird because it's like the biggest studio in the world, kind of. But I got the inspiration. I tried to figure out what was important to me in the studio, what made me feel creative, what made me feel home, what made me give, how I felt like the warmth of the studio, and then bring that into my place with my own ideas of having a hybrid between analog and digital, and still be able to do modern work, and bring in the old vintage analog side of it to it, because you have amazing tech stuff, amazing stuff during the each decade brought its quality, and if you are able to bring all that together, I think it's a unique thing, and it's it can't hurt to have a beautiful microphone that sounds really good, even though it's from the 60s. It's just
There's
beautiful.
this thing that people we get into, whether it be music or filmmaking. The music, I have a lot of the filmmaking background, and the guys will get into the discussion about the different cameras. Do you get the nice expensive camera? And people will say, at the end of the day, the camera doesn't matter. It's about the story. Well, that's true. It is true. But having a really beautiful, piece of machine that can capture your highest quality or just a really special quality is important. You can't get around that. And like you said, different things have different qualities. I shoot film. I love shooting film. I'm a film photographer. I shoot digital too, but I love shooting film. And some of the best photos I've ever taken are on some really old cameras, because, there's some beautiful things that they though the craftsmanship now is also amazing. There was something really special about some of these analog machines that was just really special back in the day, So I completely agree. Now, what are some of your favorite things that you have? Continue. You were going to say something. Sorry.
No, I just say that I really agree with what you're saying, and it's very true. It's not the pieces of gear that writes the song. That is so true, absolutely. But I don't think anybody is trying to say that either. But so there's not a contradiction here. It's what it is. It's motivation and inspiration, and of course, if a company spend 5 years building an analog device in the size of this or whatever, and they take the best components that existed in the world and everything was made by hand, I just that of course bring a special vibe to it, and if it's better or if it's not, I mean, if it's worse, it doesn't really matter what is the best. It's what brings you that genuinity or whatever you're searching for, and I mean, it's, yeah, it comes down to a matter of taste. And does anybody have a version and a B version of the same song? No, they probably don't have that. They just have this one version on Spotify right. or wherever they're going to listen, right? But I just feel like, you know, in order for me to a part of why I love what I'm doing is being surrounded by this whole thing, and you know, getting impressed by using this stuff, getting a new tone out of this, and you know, it could be anything right. like that. It's just, yeah, it's just, you know, inspiration and motivation.
I always loved that. When I was in university, I studied the classics. And one of the things I loved studying was to study about like ancient Greek philosophy. And there was this beautiful book about something I believe was written by Plato about beauty. And it was like talking about the inspiration that beauty plays in our life. And beauty doesn't have to just be a beautiful person. It can be like, you know, and when you're surrounded by these things, and the main idea of what he was saying is surround yourself with things that give you inspiration, because inspiration is so important. You know, it's like, I remember going into a showroom at one of the guitar companies, and I went into one of their showrooms for like not the regular guitars, but the super high end guitars. And I went in there and I was like, I don't want to touch anything. I was terrified, but just listening to like them being demoed, you know, and I did pick them up and I played them, but it was just like, when you get something that has been handcrafted by a master craftsman, it's just, it's almost magical, man. It's like, there's something to it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. That atmosphere just comes through the whole thing. And it's exactly what you're saying. And someone spent so much time and effort to build this. And if you look inside a vintage tape recorder from Studer, it's like an amazing watch, you know, from Switzerland. It's so well built, and it's years of development that led all the way to that final edition, right? So there is so many years behind all this that, you know, the development, the evolution of all this is enormous. And I think that going into digital, I mean, we will have that evolution, and we are in that evolution, and it will be just better and better and better. And as we can see with the phones and everything, it's just, you know, like,
it's amazing,
like this, right? It's a huge difference between the latest whatever brand and in the beginning. So the same thing with the analog stuff, and you know, it's just and another side of it, just, you know, all the components, and I think all the companies back then, the way you built a company was to build quality. Yes. That's how you got known, right? So people speak about this brand in the 60s because they build great quality. Today, that is maybe not the main reason why you buy something from a company, that they have the best quality. It's because of other advertisement, you know, tricks or whatever, you know, like layout, design, anything, you know.
I have an interesting example that's similar but different. My wife's mom bought her first refrigerator in like the 80s. Like, you know, they had gotten married. We still have it upstairs. It still works perfectly well. You know, it's right. it's a beast of a refrigerator, but it blows cool and it's never had problems. They just refill it every now and then with, like, you know, some of the gas to keep it cool. But it's amazing quality. And then we bought a new refrigerator because we wanted to get some extra space, and we were like, you know, it's time to upgrade. We bought it. The thing broke after 1 year. And it was a quality brand, you know? And it was just like, what happened?
Yeah, and it's crazy. It doesn't make sense, you know. Of course, we should be able to build even better quality today, but I don't really think that is the route that the companies are taking. You know, it's not the way they can make the most money. So they're going a different route.
Yeah,
you know?
and they've kind of shown too that some of the tech companies, if we want to refer to phones, I mean, Apple got in trouble for like literally slowing down their phones, you know, like making people think I need to get a new phone.
Yeah.
And so I think that there is this kind of this thing, but like coming back to music, I've always been really inspired by the people who are finding this good blend between the classical, the traditional, the analog, and the modern. Because I mean, let's be real, some of the new modern tools are pretty amazing. You know, the things that people are able to do in the box are super helpful sometimes. But that analog sound, man, it's special.
It is for sure. And there's a lot of plugins and stuff in the computer that tries to emulate that, of course, and it's getting really close nowadays. I mean, sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. And I just realized that for me, it's more about what type of project I'm in.
Point.
Because there's there's a certain workflow to be inside the box, you know, and that is really difficult to beat when you're in the analog world, because a lot of the times there is some kind of routing that needs to be done. You need to put that cable there, or even though you try to prepare everything as much as possible and it's just, you know, as pre-connected as it can be, there is still a little bit of you know, a job that has to be done, and that just slows down the process a little bit, I guess. And for some projects that is very sensitive and can't be done, and then I guess, you know, that's how it is. And then it's good to have an option that is faster, of course. But if you're allowed the time to bring something through something and, you know, pull it back and experiment, and can we try that with a little bit of delay, and can we do this with a little bit of echo, and can we compress that on the way in, and can we, you know, I think that's when you start developing something really unique. Maybe you can never achieve it again, and you cannot do a recall on that. But that's fine. You know, it's what happens is that you will discover something new the next time, or, you know, and that's the whole.
This is a conversation I was having with my wife. Like, one of the really interesting things that my wife is a famous singer here in Vietnam. She was the first winner of Vietnam Idol. And so she's a pro, and we were yeah. Thanks. She's a powerhouse. Now, we were having a discussion about this because we watched the movie. What was the movie? Johnny Cash's Walk the Line with Joaquin Phoenix. And one of the things is when they show him in that old recording studio in the 50s, you know, and we were talking about it, like, because she was sitting there going, it's so crazy because when you listen to those tracks, that's what they sang. Like, that is what they sang. When you listen to, like, you know, Aretha Franklin or Billie Holiday, that is not doctored. That is not, you know, there's no auto-tune. There's no comp and vocals. It's like what they sang. And she was like, as a singer, it's unreal to think about that. And she's like, I love the modern tools. She's like, I love that we can clean up vocals. I love that, you know, but it's amazing to think about, like, you know, and like you said, like, that might have been the setup on that day in the studio. And if someone went back to kind of record it again, maybe, you know, something just sounds differently. But that's what's so special too, you know?
Absolutely. And just, I always thought about this thing. Why do we go back and listen to some old songs over and over and over again? Why do I never get tired of those songs? And years later, I still go back and I listen to these songs. And it could be any genre. different for different people, but I think most of the people go back and listen to something that they can repeat and repeat. And there's a few things that I think matters, you know, it's the whole package, you know. If you are recording the most amazing singer or singers, you know, with the most gorgeous microphones, using the best preamps at the time, going into, you know, etc., etc. The whole chain is just a super built quality, so to say, and the packaging of it is not forced. It's not because it has to be the loudest. It's just what sounds the best. The focus was, you know, more of that, you know, how can we make it sound as good as possible, not as loud as possible. So if you put all of that together, all these small factors, you know, I think that's when you start getting this product that is something that lives on forever. And of course with the great songs, you know, but it's not that we don't make great songs anymore. I really think we do make great songs, but we have a different way of packaging it. So I really agree. You know,
you hit on something too, though. And this is something that I think is a big part of the answer as to why things have shifted. You said, if you have the time, why not make it better? But one of the challenges with the modern music industry is that people want things to come out quick. You know, quick. New song, because the internet wants new stuff, you know? And I'm a content creator, man. And it's like, if you don't keep things coming out, your views. And so one of the challenges is, how do you balance quality and that time frame, that quantity? It's really a tricky thing to do, you know? But I think that's what I really respect a lot of the artists that are, you know, take, you know, 5-10 years off, and they're like, I finally finished my album. And you're like, wow, took so long. But why? Because they were making sure that it was perfect. And there's something to respect in that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you achieve different type of results if you're spending a lot of time compared to not so much time. I'm not sure that the songs that we spend more time on are going to sell better, because it's a different market, you know? And so it all depends what is your purpose and what are your own goals with this. Because if your own goals and your own purpose with this is to just sell as much as possible, I don't think you need to spend so much time on the content, really, to be honest. I think, you know, you can have a template that is basically doing it for you, and you just need to create the content, the actual content, right?
Well, but
you know, and
no, you're spot on. No.
Yeah, sorry.
Sometimes there's a little lag. I hate it. I'm like, I sound so rude. I'm like cutting people off. I'm not trying to, man.
No, you're good. You're good.
So one of the things, like a good example would be, for me, it's this podcast, right? Like with this, I'm recording on a simple USB mic. And, you know, a lot of my guests are using ear pods or, you know, like an antenna mic or a headset mic. Totally fine. Because for me, the goal of this is to get something up. It's not to have like perfection. God knows. I mean, I'm not running my signal chain through like analog compressors. That would be awesome. But I don't know for a podcast if it would do anything. You know what I mean? And so it'd be cool, cool as hell. But I mean, like you said, is it necessary for what your product is, you know? And so I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's definitely, I mean, the whole thing with Spotify and all that shows that the best sound quality isn't necessary for people to enjoy a song. They just want to hear the song in this kind of crappy speakers, you know, compared to the hi-fi that people.
I've got a nice I've got a nice setup here, and then like that was the thing my wife and I were talking about. Like, One of the challenge, I set this up so that we could listen to music together. I have a nice system set up and listen and watch movies together. Because when we were, right when COVID started, I was like, oh man, I better buy something because we're not going to go to the movies for a while. And so I set things up before we got locked down. And so we were able to kind of just at home watch movies and listen to good music. But like, that's one of the challenges is when you create stuff, people are a lot of people are using something like this, a little like Bluetooth speaker, and it sounds good, better than your phone speaker, but it's not going to reflect some of those nuances to the sound that that a high def system would, or a hi-fi system would. So
exactly. Oh, you're so right. I mean, I in the beginning here, I set up this old vintage microphone with some compressors to give you a really cool sound, but then the internet didn't really work on that, so we ended up using this, right?
Wow!
And I was like, okay,
I was like, I saw your mic too, and I was like, yeah, that's awesome. But then I was a little intimidated too. I was like, damn, I'm gonna have to be the one mixing this. Oh God, it's really intimidating. But no, I know that's a crazy thing, right? Yeah, But that's also a good point that like when I approach projects too, that's one of the things that's come through on almost all my guests. Everyone talks about you can prepare as much as you want, but when it comes time, you always have to adapt. Like in projects. It's
absolutely
always there.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's always there, and it's always a little bit being on stage, and what happens in the moment happens, and you just have to be very good at dealing with that. You have to create so much experience that you kind of fast have a solution to, okay, that happened, that will mean that I will have to do this, and then I do that, and I just do it really quick. I don't debate on that. I just, okay, fine. This is my solution number two.
One of the things too, and I want to ask you about this too, because it's like, and this is the thing that I've always been fascinated by, right? So when I work, we were having a music video shot for us, right? And there was times where I had this guy, and he was like, yeah, man, I know I've shot all this stuff. I know how to do all this. And he rented this camera, and half the time he didn't know how to use it. And I was just like, so you've got all this fancy camera gear that you don't know how to use. Not a problem. But, I was just like, okay. But then this other time, we worked with this other DOP who was like, he knew his camera perfectly. He's just, and it's just like, pop, 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 pop. Okay, boom. It's just flipping his setups on like so fast. And it was this beautiful cinema camera. And I was just like, it's not necessarily about what you have as much as also, do you know how to work with it? And I mean, and it has to be like second nature. You can't think. It just has to, boom.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's very true. It's the same. The very same in music. I'd say it's always good to have. I mean, it's necessary to have experience with your gear and know that. If you, I mean, to begin with, you have to understand what kind of sound your artist wants, right? You have to communicate, and you have to be a good listener. You have to understand. You have to work on the same page, right? So once you're there and understand the idea, the picture of where we're going with this, you need to know your gear, and you need to know what I am gonna. So sorry. Yeah, that was someone calling. I wanted to put it on airplane mode, but then it's difficult to do this. When you have found out that you're on the same page, you know exactly the landscape we're painting together. You need to know what color box you're gonna bring for this painting. You need to know. What sound colors you need for creating this whole thing, and it's I think that's the beauty of all this analog. I look at everything
Right.
as colors. You know, I look at each machine. I
Yes.
see it in colors, and I see the sound of each machine in colors. That's how I remember it. I remember it to, if it's dark, it
That's
has a
awesome.
certain color. If it's bright, it has another type of color. And when she sings like that, or he
Yeah.
plays like that, that gives me a color, and the color combination with that always kind of works. You know, it's so I match colors. You know,
That's really
I don't
beautiful.
really necessarily match
That's
sound.
and
So
that's but that's been a common theme that I've been talking to people in movies and and music. People will talk about like I had this Alexandra Schaller. She was a set designer for big TV shows and stuff, and so she designs the whole set. And I said, "How do you approach it?" I start with colors because colors give me feelings, you know. And she says, like, it starts off with that vibe that something gives you,
yeah,
you know. And so it's spot on. Like, you are trying to convey emotion and feeling through sound. She was through color and sights, you know, but you're still conveying that emotional space, which is really
yeah,
interesting.
absolutely, absolutely. And it's very interesting also that when you discuss these specific colors with other people, you can find that a lot of people in music, at least, see stuff in the very same colors almost. You know, it's like slightly different, but there is a certain,
That's
you
really
know,
cool.
similarity in the colors that we see. And I find that very interesting. Like, why does she see purple in this type of music, this type of song? Why is this song purple? And why is it purple
That's
for me?
really
You know,
cool.
why is that so obvious? Why is it not yellow? You know, and etc.
That's really
Yeah.
interesting. I want to come back to that later on. That is a really interesting topic. And I want to see if you can share with me some examples of what a like different color song would be. Now, I want to ask this. Now imagine that I am a singer and I'm coming to you and I want to put something together. Now, how do you approach from the second a person comes to you to how do you approach like preparing for that project? Like, what do you do? What types of questions do you ask them
Well,
to understand the color that they want?
right, exactly. So, first of all, it really depends in what way you want me to help you. Is it to co-write
That's a
the
good point.
song, or do you already have the
Mm-hmm.
song? Do you just want me to record your song, or do you want me to mix the song, or do you want me to do vocal mix? There's, you know,
It's a lot of
right
work.
today we have, I think, someone like me can be hired for very different purposes, you know, like different
That's a good point.
stages in the production. Either someone comes
Yeah.
very early on and we collaborate on the whole thing, and maybe I do that on speculation. Maybe that's, I really believe in this artist, I really believe in this song. Maybe I just put a lot of energy to finish the songs or start writing them. You know, maybe they're not even written yet. Maybe
Yeah.
there's just an embryo, like a melody and chords or something. You know, um,
That's a good point.
so first of all, you need to find out, you know, and learn the artist. That is that is actually the most difficult thing. Like, how does this artist want to sound like? You know, what is it
Yeah.
he or she wants to sound like? And once you figure that
Mm-hmm.
out, and I don't know how you just find out by working together a little bit. You know, you
Yeah.
just start doing stuff, I guess, and or listen to stuff that artist has been doing before, and maybe enhance. How can you enhance that? How could I have made this even better? How do I see this going to the next level? Or, you know, and maybe ask, do you have references? What do you want to sound like?
Yeah.
Or, you know, even though I don't
Mm-hmm.
really like to compare with other existing artists and music, I just, sometimes that is the way the artist wants to do it, and the artist presents, I want to sound like this, you know. So you got to be open to all of that. And then I mean, I really like to be involved in the recording process, absolutely, because that is
Yeah.
such a moment where the embryo of the song is, everything is just new, and the artist is on fire, and it's just, you know, like everything you record is just exciting, you know.
I think honestly, to me, for music, because I do music with my wife, and having a really skilled person there, because you're not just recording, you're also the person who's like really capturing those vocals is also like emotionally supporting.
Absolutely.
Like you are there as this emotional support person. You are also like almost like a spiritual guide, you are there, as this person who's like, I am here in this present moment with you. And they have so much power over crafting that. And I remember once we went to this one studio, and when my wife was recording, the tech just was like this. And he just starts, and he's just on his phone, and then he kept popping over here, and then he's looking around the room while she was recording her vocals. And I was just like, I'm losing my mind. And I was like, come on, man, be present. Yeah. But it comes back to that, just be present. And I'm not hating on him, but it brought her out of her zone.
Of course.
She lost it, and she was like, she couldn't feel it, and she didn't want to come back to that song for a bit, because she couldn't finish that day because she wasn't supported. And that's just the emotional side of support, not to mention the quality and skill of, if you're going to be, you know what you're hearing, what sounds good, and also you can then make sure that you're adjusting the mic and everything's getting, your signal chain coming in is what you want.
Right. I mean, you can do a lot of preparation when it comes to the technical stuff. You can really know your stuff, and you can really have things set up and prepared before the artist comes in. The session is up there, her or his demo is already loaded in your DAW. You have everything, so you basically just press play when the artist comes in, and the artist can hear the song, right away, and it's like you're already home, like you're already in. Yeah, we're in the same room. We're in your room, in your living room right now, with your song, with your embryo, right? So that's a good start. And then, as you say, the faster you can catch the colors that you want to bring into this, the more catched by the moment the artist will get. The more excited that artist is going to get. And I'm not saying you have to bring a lot of things in. Sometimes you don't have to bring anything in. Maybe it's just already there very naturally in a microphone in the song, and that's it. So it's just about making the right decisions, and sometimes that is to not do much at all, and just lean back a little bit, and and some artists really drive themselves. Like I work with one guy. He's just a phenomenal producer himself, and most of the time I just need to dig what he's doing, and we're just vibing around that. And then just those very few moments when he really needs my help, I need to be fast with my experience to know how to create that snare sound or whatever it is. Like, so you want that snare drum to sound like that? Okay, just hang on 2 seconds. I think it's like this. You want, right? And then he goes like, "That's exactly why I'm here with you." And then it's that instant thing, and that takes you to what you were saying before. You need to be present, because if you weren't present during all that time before he actually calls on you, you don't know. I mean, you have to go through. It's like, can you repeat the last 10 minutes? What happened in here? Because I was on my phone. I don't think that doesn't really work. So being available, being present, I think is very, very important, and make the artist feel like you're really working on the same project with the same goal, and you're a team.
Yeah. Well, and you pointed out earlier that you talked about the importance of listening. And I think that it is a skill in our world society that is not reinforced, is not taught enough. That sometimes You need to just shut up and listen. And listen is an active process. It is. So when I was working with my daughter and my nephew today, they were really naughty. they were playing and they were super naughty. And one of the things I did was when I would tell them, all right, you need to stop running. And they're like, okay. 2 seconds later, they're running. You know what I mean? So I'd sit there and look at them and I'd say, okay, you need to stop running. And wait a second. And they're getting ready to go again. And I said, okay, what did I just tell you? All right, I'm going to say it again. You need to stop running. And they're like, okay. I said, what did I tell you? We need to stop running. And you know what happened after that? They stopped running. Because, I was teaching them to listen. But I think so often in life, people kind of forget that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think, like you say, you were talking about social media before and all that, and it doesn't really invite you to be a listener. It more or less tells you that you need to talk more than you listen, because you need to talk about yourself. You need to promote yourself. You need to be constant about that. Provide constant content. You need to feed this whole machine all the time. But what comes with that is that when are you supposed to listen? It's we are learning. We get behaviors from this without even knowing it, I think.
Yeah. No, I think you're spot on. 100%. And that's one of the ideas behind a podcast. This podcast is like, I'm trying to get people on that I can have conversations with, that can share their stories, and I can just shut up and just go, But I mean, it's also facilitating the conversation, and I have to listen. I have to listen to what they say and kind of pick out points that I think are really special. Now, how did you get into music? How did you get started in this process?
Wow, well,
go way back.
You want to get the long story?
Wherever you want to go, man.
Right. Well, I think it started with my dad being a drummer.
Nice.
He was a drummer. He was in the progressive rock scene. He played in a Swedish band called Marten. And
nice.
It's a quite famous band at the time. There were support acts for Jimi Hendrix and Frank Zappa when they were in Sweden.
Like,
it's really cool. I don't even touch that level. It's I try, but
that's not even minorly cool, man. That's really cool.
I mean, it's like, wow. It's unreachable for someone like me at this, today. But so he had his white drums in his room in the house, and he was playing sometimes, and I was sitting in the couch. It was like placing an audience, and then you sit there, and then I go behind the drums, put a record on, and I play to that. And I was just sitting there for 30 minutes, listening, and just getting impressed by how this thing sounds acoustically, And I immediately after that, I just put these drawers upside down, the one you put your clothes in and then you put them under your bed. I just brought them out, emptied the trays or whatever it is, and you put them upside down and you start playing with I took these railways. It was a rail for the train. The train.
The train track.
Yeah,
train
right.
Track.
Exactly. It was built by pieces of wood, right? So I took them apart, and those were the drumsticks. So. And I was playing with them, and I had my brother to be a part of this because we were going to arrange a concert together, and we had an entrance. We took you had to buy tickets for this, of course.
That's
we
awesome.
only had 2 visitors, which was mom and dad. But it was, still it happened, and we did this, on a regular basis. I tried to, get into taking drum lessons. I think I was like 5 or 6 years old. At that time, it wasn't so easy to get drum lessons from. So here in Sweden, we have municipality music schools, and it's been provided since the 60s, I think, and which is an amazing thing by the government. And what happens is that they support this financially, which is making it available for almost everyone in the country to just pay a little bit of a fee and have access to teachers in music. and get maybe around 20 to 30 minutes per week as a lesson, and then you practice between that, of course. So I was trying to get into that, and we applied, and there was no room available for me in the schedule. So, but they said you can start with piano, and it's a good way to learn the theory behind it, and then you can go into drums. I didn't know anything about music, so of course you accept whatever comes to you at that age. So I started with piano. It wasn't really my thing. I just tried to, do exactly what my teacher did. I didn't really bother to read. Later on, I think it's because my eyes wasn't that, good. But anyway, so when I was, I think, around 11 years old, I was able to start drum lessons. And we were starting with bossa nova, and it was, very different from what I was listening to. I was listening to pop rock music, and but you were happy to just hit these drums finally, And I eventually I got into a band that were doing rock music, and I said, finally, this is the sound I've been looking for, and I had a music teacher in that would be high school, and he let me lend the drums during the summer vacation, so I could.
Oh, nice.
My mom used to work in that school, and they were colleagues, and she told him that I played drums, and I didn't have any drums, and he said, well, you can borrow these drums during this. They need to be back, but by the end of the summer, but you can use them. And that was a savior for my whole thing, because I played every day, the whole day, constantly during the summer.
That's awesome.
It was rock set. It was all this, type of stuff that rock and pop music. So at the age of 14, my dad finally bought me a drum set. He sold that drum set he had before I actually started playing drums. So you could wonder why I didn't play on his drums, but it was because those sold just before I got interested in it. So it was like this gap. And then he bought me a new drum set when I was 14, which is, I still have it. And it was
that's really cool.
It was the one drum set that I needed. So I continued with music on the side. I did guitars, I did drums, but I had to do the regular school as it was, and I studied more of a scientific program in college, because the traditions were that's the way you keep the doors open, right? So you can get any type of job, you can continue with any type of education, but you can do your music on the side. Fine. I can see why that was, the way they put it. And so I did. And then after after college, I took a year off, and I started to figure out what I wanted to do. And I said to myself, if I don't try a music education at some point, I'm never going to, know what this is going to lead to. I will be that person that never tried. So I just felt like, okay, let's take a year, just take 1 year and apply for a program. So I applied to, I think, every school in this country.
Awesome.
And the thing was, I didn't know at the time that so many of these schools were into jazz music. And I had no idea, I came there with my rock stuff. I was prepared to play rock music or pop music, which was, I really loved jazz music. I did at the time too, but I didn't play it. It wasn't something I practiced. So when a jazz drum kit sounds very, very different from a rock pop drum kit.
Yeah.
It could be the same kit, but you tune it differently. So
Yeah.
it was like boom, 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 and I was like, "What is this? What is going on here?" It's like boom, boom in the bass drum, and I was like, "Wow, this is not comfortable." I don't know how to do this, and then it was, obviously that went to hell. Quite frankly, with just all these schools, I didn't, none of these schools let me in, and there was just one school in Stockholm that let me in, and then I had to pay for that. So. But that was more pop rock, and I took it.
Awesome.
I said, okay, it's worth it. I will try, and let's see what happens. And so that year led me to another school that was doing pop rock music the next year, and that's where I actually had a teacher who really taught me the way I needed to understand music theory by going through mathematics, because I came from a scientific background, and he really explained to me, like, this is the mathematics behind this subdivisions and everything, and it's really what it comes down to is this, and everything just I just processed. Yeah, exactly. That clicked. Everything clicked, and I started to understand some stuff that I heard before in my life, but I'd never really understood before. And that was an amazing, feeling. And I practiced a lot of drums, and eventually I got into the university, and I continued with my drums and my music. And also at some point there, me and my friends, we were doing a lot of cover gigs and shows, and at some point there we went to a school and played we had a show for the kids, and we played some music, and these kids, I brought quite a good band. I know that, and the kids were very impressed. They were like, "Oh, please sign autographs, please tell us how to play this. Can you teach us how to play? Teach us how to play." It became this thing. They were screaming, and
That's awesome.
I was like, okay, they really want us to teach them how to play. Let's see, let's try that. We can do that. Yes, for sure. Let's put up a program for, a schedule with 10 occasions, 10 weeks program, and see what happens. And in order for me to do this properly, I need to know, what instrument do you want to play? What type of music do you want to play? What do you listen to? So I started to ask all these questions, and later I realized that nobody was asking the kids these questions, because we still, we had these municipality music schools that I was talking about, but they already had their program. They had their thing going since the 60s, right? Maybe some of them were a little bit different, but it was very, very the same, that in the way it was run. So all of a sudden I started to ask them these questions, and they could just immediately start with electric guitars or drums or whatever they wanted to play, and they don't needed to play piano before they could play drums, because that's where we have spots available. So I just put them, wherever they wanted. If you want to play guitars, I found a friend who plays guitar in my class, and and we were all like 22, but it didn't really matter, because we were providing something that they were asking for. So we didn't really have to tell these kids why they were there. They were there because they wanted to be there, because they wanted to play like us. So I already initiated the dream, the vision, and then I just provided the tools for it. I didn't know at the time that was what I was doing, but I realized that later. And we did the same thing on other schools, other primary schools, I have to say, because that is important. We went visiting other primary schools and secondary schools, and we put up a show for the kids with 6 songs, 7 songs, and they were all very interested. They wanted to start right away, and all of a sudden a third of the school, of the primary school, just applied to our music program. Awesome. And I was like, whoa, really awesome. What happened? That's a lot. Maybe I should run awesome. The other way, or should I deal with it was just happening very fast. And at the same time, I was studying myself, at the university. So long story short, I quit the university at a point where I felt that it was more for them and not for me. What I was doing, I was writing essays and stuff, and that was very far from the reason I started studying music. So for me, it didn't really work out doing it that way. And I said to, like, okay, this is it. This is, I think I reached a point where I'm not really learning anything, and I'm just here because for you, to fill up the seats in this room, right? And I could say that because I could see my school was, growing and growing, and I just, okay, well, I'm hiring these people that get graduated here, so maybe I should just focus on that instead of getting graduated myself, because I don't need to be the best teacher in order to be communicating with all these. I still need to be a good teacher. It's still I need to understand. It's like you have a chef in the kitchen and he needs to know everything, and the owner, maybe he was a chef in the kitchen and he needs to know how the processes are working. So it's important to know all these steps, but eventually you need to let go of some stuff, and I let go of my teaching in order to hold on to the school, and I mean to develop the school. So I had to let go of the teaching part, and I always had this dream from, especially the dream definitely developed during my university time to have a studio because I was in a university where they had a lot of studios, and I was like, wow, this is so beautiful. This is amazing. Time stands still in this room. And I really want that at some point. But I wasn't really going that direction because I was doing a music school, and I was like, how should I turn this more and more into what I really want to do? I really like the school too, but what about that studio? So I joined a band when I moved back to Stockholm, and we started to build our own little place, and it was the foundation of a studio maybe, but it was on a very financially affordable basis, and it wasn't very quality wise, it wasn't really
it wasn't there yet.
No, not really. But I kept on working with my school, and I just started to take more jobs as a freelancer, and I just worked really hard on that, and expanded the school. And when we started, it was about 18 students, and today I think we are around 1,200 students, and we're 46 teachers, and it's really its own thing, and it lives by itself. And I was able to at a point build my studio and starting to have that grow and become its own thing too, and that's I'm really grateful for that. I really am, and I don't think I would have stayed in the music business if it wasn't for my school, if it wasn't for these small things that happened during the whole way. It's just happened. It wasn't really planned, but I mean I think that what I possibly did well was that I saw the opportunity in things, and when I saw it, I also committed to it, and I did it at the very best I could, and I found good people to work with, and that is something that I think is my biggest gift, if I could put it that way, is to find good people to work with. I can see if you and I are going to work together, and if we're going to do it in a good way, and if it's going to be taking us to the next level, I can really see the potential in that, and I think that helped me a lot. I think that was a bigger gift than being the best teacher or anything like that. I don't think I ever was the best teacher in my school at all. I was just necessary at that point to be a teacher, because there was nobody else who's going to take the job of 4 students. But it was necessary that someone did, and I did it, and I learned how to do it, and it wasn't what I was meant to do forever, but it was something that took me from that point to the next point, and then being able to find all these talented people to work together. So
It's really
Yeah.
awesome. Do you ever see this? Steve Jobs did this one speech about how when he was coming up, all these different events happened, but he didn't realize that they were all actually connected, and that they were putting him in the position to build what he was looking to build. You know, if he hadn't have gotten this happened, then this wouldn't have happened. And he says you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them when you look back and go, oh, that event led to this event, which led to this event. And so much of what you're describing just completely plays into that same story of like, and of success too. Like, sometimes we have a saying in English, to strike while the iron is hot.
Yeah.
And it's so true. Like, if something is working and it's happening, you go at it. You don't sit there and wait. It's like, this is working. And like you said, like, I need to go here. I need to push into this project and step back from this because this isn't working and this is.
Right, exactly. I think you're on point, and exactly the thing you described, that you don't really know what's going to connect the dots before you're going through the whole thing. But what is important, I think, is to be active and to put yourself in forums and in spaces where people are doing what you want to do. Where you have to be in the right environment. You can't be in a car shop if you want to be in a music studio. You will never create. I mean, I will never say never, but there will be a very small chance for you to create your music studio inside that car shop with those people, because that is going to be there's going to be another focus there, and you're not going to build a car in a music studio. I don't think so, at least. And if you want to, if you want to work out if you want to become a bodybuilder, you need to go to a gym, or you need to be in that forum. You need to be with people that trains, that motivate you, that have the energy in that very topic that you're interested in, and that energy bounces, and you exchange that energy, and that's what's make you grow. And really the thing that actually took me from point A to B and C was that I just said to myself in the very beginning that I need to apply for these schools when I was 20 years old. I need to try that 1 year. And that was the change I did. I was working in a clothing store, but that clothing store wasn't taking me so much into the music business. Of course not, because we were selling clothes. So I need to change my forum. I need to turn the car, and go this way, because that's where things might lead to another, etc.
And you don't necessarily know how. You don't have to know the how. You just have to try.
Yeah, absolutely.
You just have to start. I don't know where this is going to go, but I'm going to take a step in this direction. And
because if it doesn't work, you know that thing didn't work, and that's the definition. Okay, now I know this doesn't work. Let me try this one instead. Okay, it didn't work either. What about this? It's completely different from the other two. So, okay, maybe this works, and it works, and that's great. This leads to that, and this leads to that. But you will never know what the final destination is, and I still don't know what my final destination is. It is, and then that's part of the beauty, right? That's what triggers you to move on, and to be energized every day. That you don't really know what's going to happen a year from now, and etc.
That's beautiful, man. This has been a masterclass in awesomeness, man. I really appreciate it.
Well, me too, man.
I want to say, man, it was a great to have a conversation with you tonight. I'd love to have you come back on again sometime and talk more music, man, if that might be something you're open to.
Absolutely.
I would love to have you come on and talk to me about the colors of music, like to actually do a podcast about that. Like, let's chat about that after we're done, man, because that to me is really interesting.
Absolutely. I would love to do that, for sure.